So, to me, the announcement of Overdress wasn't that long ago. But apparently the release of the very first main booster set is next week. Yeah, time has really flown by these last couple of months.
Stand up! Vanguard!
Hey Cardfighters, welcome back to another Cardfight update, as today we've got some more card reveals for the upcoming main booster set for Overdress itself, Genesis of the 5 Grades. As last week or this week, I'm probably late on this video, so let's say last week, we got a lot of interesting cards for the respective nation and new toys and tools to work with. But I think we see some very impactful cards for Keter Sanctuary and some nice addition for Stoicheia as well as Brandt Gate. So without any further ado, let's jump straight into these cards, because this might be the second to last card reveal video that we're gonna do for this set, but more on that at the end of this video. So let's start off with the new cards that we got for Dragon Empire. We're gonna start off with this great one, which is Stealth Fiend Shigamanago. And Shigamanago has the ability Auto Rigard Circle. When your opponent's Rigard is retired during your main phase, retire this unit, look at the top cards of your deck, and you may call units from among them to the Rigard Circle. If you do not, put the rest into your soul. So this is actually a really nice card, especially for the new Eugene deck, because the whole Eugene deck is to rest your Rigard so you can snipe one of your opponent's units and then repopulate the board with new units. Now the main negative point about that playstyle is that you need to rest your own units, thus forcing you to then recall on top of them to get an effective board. So if you don't get actual value out of them, you're wasting some type of resources in the long run. Now luckily they already got the great one of the right chain that can retire itself, thus opening up the board. But now they also have this great one, which can basically do the same, because you can rest this card with Eugene, you retire something by doing so, thus then instantly enabling this effect, so you can then retire her, which she was rest, so you have no use for her anyways, and then call the top card of the deck to the field. And if that card is a bad card, don't worry, you can still check the X amount of cards now with Eugene to then maybe replace it with something better, but in the case it's a really good card, you can just keep it there. So this is another card that synergizes really nicely with the great one of the right chain that then synergizes with Eugene to get more value out of the card. Now you could also use this as a generic tool for Dragon Empire if you have some main phase retire option, as we have that with the order card. Is that good enough? I'm not so sure, but who knows, maybe it finds its niche. For now, it allows you to get more value out of Eugene, which Eugene can get all the help that it could get. So the deck is kind of lackluster for what it is right now, so it's a nice upgrade. Now, on top of that, we also got a brand new Drag Raider card, and this time, once again, a grade 2, as we have Drag Raider Dabba. And Dabba has the ability Auto, when this unit is placed on the Rigard Circle, cost Counterblast 2 and Soul Charge 1. Choose one of your opponent's Rearguards and retire it. So, once again, another retire skill. Now, this is Counterblast 2, which is really heavy, but you also get a soul out of it. Now, in a generic sense, this sounds really bad, as you pay a counterblast for a retire, which is fine, and then a counterblast for another soul, which is bad. So overall, this is kind of an underwhelming card. But in the Eugene deck, this is actually a really good card, because for one, it's an unplace effect, so it can synergize with Eugene. It also synergizes with the great one we just talked about, and it seems also main phase retire. It can activate your certain abilities, but more importantly, the Eugene deck doesn't really rely on counterblast all that much, and it does rely on soul. So having this card as a tech choice, or maybe it's going to be a somewhat staple of the deck, it gives the deck more firepower to go through, which is pretty nice. So this might actually help the deck in the long run, but we have to see what the other support is going to do and if the deck gets a bit more toys to work with. But overall, it's a nice upgrade for the Eugene deck in general. Now, those were the only two cards that we got for Dragon Empire, so let's dive into Dark States. As for Dark States, we also got two new cards to work with, and we first start off with this great one, which is Eminence Jarbobaros. And Jarbobaros has the ability Auto Rigard Circle. When his unit boosts, this unit gets power plus 2k until the end of turn. So, it's a 10k booster. It's not that great. It's fine for now, as it allows you to hit for magic numbers and also a bit more aggressive in the early game, but this will probably be replaced ASAP. But interesting enough, Dark States also get its own Blitz order, which in this case is a grade 1 Blitz order that is Tartarus Beat Scrum. And Tartarus Beat Scrum has the ability, if your soul has 5 or more cards, choose one of your units and it gets power plus 15k until the end of the battle. Now, this is basically the generic blitz order that we see for most nations. I'm assuming that every nation is going to get this if they not already have that, where we see a 15k shield blitz order. Which is great because it's the highest shield value that we currently have access to, so it allows you to get more trigger shields in your deck. But more importantly, this condition is overall pretty easy to fulfill, because as you can see of the artwork, it's the units of the Violence Bruised deck, and we have the whole Dark Regulars build that ramp up soul anyways. Now I have to say that the build for Violence Bruised, they might come in the situation where they just cannot activate this order card because they need the Soul Blaster cards to activate their skills, and if they cannot ramp up immediately 5 soul after Soul Blasting 5 cards every single turn, that means that this order, blitz order, will never be online. So it's kind of risky in that build if you do not have the excessive amount of soul generating where you can turn it out turn after turn. So be a bit more careful on that particular build, but overall it's a nice blitz order. Now with that said, let's dive into the main bulk of the reveals from last week, which are the cards for Keter Sanctuary, as Keter Sanctuary got quite a significant buff. Last week we saw a nice buff for Dragon Empire, but a major buff with Dark States, with the whole reveals for the Dark States build. And this time it's the other main deck that was showcased in the first episode of the Cardfight Vanguard Overdressed anime, as Keter Sanctuary got some nice cards. And we start off with this grade 1 RR Painkiller Angel. And she has the ability Auto Rigid Circle. At the end of battle, this unit boosted, cost Soul +1 and retire this unit and draw a card. This is a very simple skill, but it's effective and it's nice. It basically allows you to replace this card from the field into your hand, thus being more aggressive in the early game, which can be the negative point or the downside of the whole Keter Sanctuary deck with the main reliance on Great Freeze. But it also allows you to potentially draw into more of your key piece or the cards that you need if you lack shield value or a certain amount of Great Freeze, which is nice overall. And at the same time, it can negate against control clans because you're removing units off your field and then replacing cards in your hand, which is also a nice bonus addition to this card. But of course we're talking about Keter Sanctuary and we want to know about the Great Freeze for Bastion. And that starts off with the most important Great Freeze that we've seen so far, because we've seen power, we've seen boosters, we've seen draw potential in Great Freeze. The only thing that we missed was shield value. Well, that's a thing of the past, because they got this Great Free Angel, Mystic, Amethyst, Coca-BL. And Coca-BL has the ability Continuous Guardian Circle. If your Vanguard is Apex Ruler Bastion, this unit gets shield plus 5k for every 2 of your Great Free units, including this unit. Now, the important thing here to note is that this thing specifies Great Free units. That means it counts Vanguards, it counts Rearguards, and it counts Guardians. So when you guard with this card, you 100% always have 5k shield, because the moment that the skill activates, you are sitting on Bastion, which, if you don't know, happens to be a Great Free. So that's already 2 Great Frees on the field, because she's your Guardian and he is your Vanguard, so that's 5k. But if your front row is also filled with Great Frees, which is most likely the case if you play Bastion, that's another 2 cards, so she suddenly turns into a 10k shield. If your back row is filled, that's another 5k, and suddenly she's turned into a 15k unit. Now if your entire back row is filled, and you call a second Coca-BL or another Great Free to the Guardian Circle, then she turns from a 15k into a 20k shield. So as you can see, this card is a consistent 5k shield with a high potential of being 10k and potentially 15k and higher, which is pretty good for a Great Free body. So overall, this is a nice addition to the Apex Ruler Bastion build for more shield value if you want that in your Great Free lineup, where you can then say, I can run more Great Frees in the process without losing shield value by doing so, which is a nice addition for the whole deck to increase the consistency of having those Great Free in your hands, as well as being able to drive check them when you want them to see them. But of course, those aren't the only Great Frees that we have for Keter Sanctuary, as we have a couple of more, because next up we have this Great Free, which is Great Snake Witch Solaria. And Solaria has a ability which we have seen somewhat before in Brandt Gate, as she has the ability Auto. When this card is discarded from your hand during your turn, cost counter +1, Soul +1, and draw a card. So we've seen this on a grade 2 for Brandt Gate, where it can call itself to the field for a counter +1 discarded. This basically allows you to draw a card. Now, we know we can combine this with the right deck, so if you discard her for the right deck, you can use this ability to then immediately draw a card if you need it. But more importantly, the issue is with the Brandt Gate one, there's only 2 small window of opportunities to actually use the card. And yes, to some extent it also is with Keter Sanctuary, but Bastion's ability needs you to discard a card. Meaning this effect will be active throughout the entirety of the game, because every time you draft check a grade 3, you can discard her to immediately draw. And if you draft check herself, then you can immediately discard that same card or that same copy to then immediately draw into more cards, which is actually really good because the overall build for Bastion doesn't really need to use a lot of Counterblast and Soul Blast. Especially with the latest release that they got, because we saw a sneak peek of a new card which was showcased in a magazine. And that is a brand new grade 3, which is Knight of War Damage Fossat. And Fossat has the ability Continuous Vanguard Circle. This unit cannot be chosen by your opponent's card effects. So it has resist. It's immune for Dragon Empire's field removal, as well as Brandt Gate's Imprison mechanic, which is nice because it means you have some sticking power to the board, and it being on a grade 3 body is nice because it means you get more effectiveness out of all your skills. But the main kicker is in its second ability, which is Auto Vanguard Circle. When this unit attack hits, counter charge 1 and soul charge 1. This is your resource engine. It gives you soul and counterblast. So if this card hits, you immediately refund the cost of Solaria that we just talked about for that draw potential. But it also somewhat refund the cost of the grade 3 triple R unit that allows you to draw 2 cards. So this is a nice way to refund all those powerful skills and be able to use them turn after turn. But more importantly, this is an ability that isn't once per turn, so you can restand it with Bastion and potentially activate its skill twice. But on top of it, this ability states when this unit attack hits, comma. There's no when hits the Vanguard, meaning you can just slam into rearguards and that probably is more likely to hit, because if your opponent is going to guard those attacks just to not give you the resources, they're probably wasting way more shields than they actually are needed to, just to say no against your resources that you might or might not even need in the first place. So this is a really nice card to put up more pressure against your opponent, and it allows you to do some more interesting plays to get the most bang of your buck in every situation. So overall, Knight of War Damage Facade is a nice addition that could again be utilized for the Bastion build. And with that, we have a lot of insane grade 3s, meaning the deck for Bastion can widely vary between players, as we have too many good grade 3s and you have no chance of actually slotting in them all in your deck and have consistent access to every single one of them. So I'm very curious of how different the builds are going to be depending in between different players, as there are so many interesting options that we have access to, and I think there are even more potential for more cards in this set, and 100% definitely the case when we see even more support in the future. So pretty exciting. That's everything that we have for Keter Sanctuary, so let's dive into the card for Stoicheia. And we started with the grade 2, which is Sylvan Horn Beast Aleio. And Aleio has the ability Act on Rearguard Circle, cost, retire this unit, choose 2 of your units, and they get power plus 5k until the end of turn. So it's basically a discard to give 2 units 5k power. It's not the greatest of skills, but you can use it to be a bit more aggressive in the early game. You can slam it down, just attack with it, and if it survives, then when you do your Persona right turn, or a turn where your power number matters, you can then retire it to get more power onto the board, which could be fine. At the very least, it doesn't cost you Counterblast and Soul Blast, so you can play with that if you needed extra space, or you cannot afford the resource in general. But a card that's actually really nicely for Stoicheia is another grade 2 Blitz order that they got. Because, of course, they got another order, because Stoicheia is the Blitz order, or the order nation of Vanguard nowadays. As it got this grade 2 Blitz order, Ghost Chase. And this Blitz order has the ability, choose one of your units, and it gets power plus 5k until the end of the battle. Choose one of your rearguards that is not being attacked and return it to your hand. So it's a 5k shield on the grade 2, which is basically the same shield as any other grade 2 card you would have in your hand. So you're not losing on shield value. But on top of that, you're able to bounce back a unit into your hand. This has so many different applications for Stoicheia. First off, it allows you to reuse any on-place effects. And we have a couple. We have got the Mega Colony Grade 1, which has the on-place effects that allows you to give free power. I think we have some on-place effect that use Counterblast to draw a card or something like that. Not 100% sure. But on top of that, it also allows you to reset the board to some extent. Because we have the whole Magnolia right chain, which I believe the Grade 1 allows you to superior call a unit to the field from the top of your deck. If that happens to be a trigger unit, you're basically screwed over and you're gonna lose a lot of shield value because of it. And even power onto the board because it's not a great unit to attack or boost with. Now, thanks to this order card, you can bounce back the trigger to your hand, thus gaining access to that shield value. And more interestingly enough, when you bounce back that unit to your hand, if that happens to be a trigger unit, you can then immediately slam it down onto the field to get more guard out of it. And this also opens up for some interesting early aggro plays where you can basically annoy your opponent a little bit or mind game a little bit here. Because you can slam down triggers in the early game to be more aggressive, to hit those magic numbers in certain situations. But it also signals against your opponent that you're willing to be more aggressive and they think you're losing out on shield value, thus making a more risky play, a more aggressive play where they think they can kill you because you lack the amount of guard potential. But then when you slam down this blitz order, you can bounce back that trigger and immediately guard with it and then have enough shield and they just maybe waste too much cards from their hand to do their play and now you can kill them on the crackback because they used a bit too much resources for that particular turn. So this card opens up some interesting plays and some interesting mind games depending on your playstyle. So overall, a really nice blitz order. But on top of that, we also saw a brand new triple R for Stoicheia, which is Sylvan Hornby's Gnosla. And Gnosla has the ability Auto, Back Row Rearguard Circle. When this unit attacks, cost Counterblast 1, choose one of your other rearguards, and it gets this unit's power until the end of turn. Increased its power at that time. So this card allows you to give another unit an extra power buff. This actually synergizes really nicely with the support that we've seen so far with Stoicheia, because Stoicheia has these cards that allows to buff our unit. We have the Mega Colony one that on plays can give a unit plus 5k power. We have the Grade 2 we just talked about, can give another 5k power. If we stack that all on this unit, and then we attack with Magnolia and give this card another 5k, it, of course, can attack from the back row, which probably at the time is maybe 20, 25k, maybe even more amount of power that can hit over defensive triggers. But then, it can give its power to another potential back row attacker if we Persona Road, and that unit suddenly gets an increase of 25k. And then it's suddenly a 40k beater or something like that. Which means it's another very powerful unit that can hit over defensive triggers, no problem. So this is a very interesting card that allows you to be very aggressive and pump up a lot of power. But more interesting enough, if we want to go crazy, we can chain him. Because if we have him multiple times in the back row, we can attack with one, give all its power to the other one, and then when it's attacked, it gives all its power to the third one, and when it's attacked, it gives all that power to another unit onto the field. So you double the power 2 times. So if this thing was a 20k attacker, you give its 20k to the other one, and if that's a 15k, it's suddenly 35k, and then you give that 35k to the other one, which is maybe at the time 50k, and then you give that 50k power to another unit, and suddenly that unit is maybe 70 or 80k power. Yeah, now suddenly all those multi-attacks sounds kind of ridiculous. Yes, it costs a lot of counterblast, but it's a very powerful final turn scenario, so yeah, the deck is actually looking pretty sweet so far. So I think it's a really great card for Magnolia to have to finally increase those numbers to overcome those pesky defensive triggers. But we're not done just yet, because we also have some Brandt Gate cards. And for Brandt Gate, we have this Grade 2 Frigid Mutant Drummler. And Frigid Mutant Drummler has the ability Auto. When this unit is placed on the rearguard circle, if your world is Abyssal Dark Knight, cast Counterblast 1 and Soulblast 1 and draw a card. This card I'm not really that much fan of, because it's a Counterblast Soulblast for a draw, which isn't a great amount of value. But on top of that, it forces you to already be an Abyssal Dark Knight. The issue that I have with the deck is that you actually want to draw as early as possible to get access to your Abyssal Dark Knight as consistently as possible. But if your draw engine is only live after the fact, then what's the point of the draw power if the whole idea of the draw power is to get consistent access to your multiple pieces, which one of those happens to be your world orders. So I'm kind of whatever about the card. The draw cost is a bit overcosted and the condition is kind of annoying. So for me, it's kind of whatever out there. Maybe you're gonna run it, maybe you don't. We have to wait and see. But a card that probably is going to be played and run is this Grade 1 RR Detonation Mutant Bulbamine. And Bulbamine has the ability, on a Rigard Circle, at the end of the battle it boosted. If your order zone has a set order cost, put this unit into your soul and countercharge 1. This is a soul charger and a countercharger for basically nothing. Yes, you lose a rearguard in the process, so it's a potential discard, but you could still attack with or boost with it, so you get value out of it. And it's generically enough that it can be used for the Imprison mechanic as well as for the Abyssal World, Dark World mechanic itself, the Link Joker-esque thing. So it's a nice generic card for resource in general. I think the Imprison mechanic is going to benefit most out of it because they can utilize both resources quite effectively to keep imprisoning your opponent's field, thus putting in more pressure on your opponent and draining more of their resources in the process. But we have to wait and see how effective this is going to be in a generic sense, as maybe we're going to see even more potential set order builds that can utilize this card in the future. But overall, a very nice resource card nonetheless. And with that, we've seen all the new cards from last week that we haven't discussed before, and we've seen some interesting cards. I think Keter Sanctuary got the biggest boost. We do see some interesting support for Stoicheia as well with the whole Magnolia build and the new Blitz order, so I'm very curious of what we're going to see this week. As yes, at the beginning of this video I said that we're probably gonna be doing one more video of this 141st set, because right now we only do not know about 40 cards in that set. And yes, 40 cards sounds a lot, but of those 40 cards, 20 of them are just new triggers. We're gonna get a new crit, heal, front, and draw trigger in the art style of the secondary deck, meaning you can already write off 20 of those 40 cards, thus leaving with 20 cards left. Of those 20, I think there is a highly likely chance that 5 of them are gonna be a vanilla card for the new builds as well, and then we have 15 cards left. 2 of them are triple Rs, 3 of them are double Rs, and a couple of rares and commons thrown in between. Now, with the next Tuesday stream, they didn't really announce any card reveals, but if they're gonna reveal a card, I assume they're gonna reveal one of the triple Rs, and my biggest bet is then on Verena Valiente, because that's probably the main big reveal that they have left, as it's the box cover art unit, so I assume they're gonna do something special about it and not just a random card of the day reveal. But at the same time, it cannot happen next week, because next week's Tuesday live stream is the week of the release of the set. And per usual, in that same week, on that Tuesday live stream, they're gonna do a match play or an exhibition match of 2 decks of the new set. And they usually don't reveal any new cards. Now, granted, because we're in Overdress and they have a new staff and Keita Mori is now on the steering wheel, this might change and we might see something different for that particular live stream that happens in the week of the release, but we don't know. And I assume with the amount of cards left after this week, we probably have seen all the most impactful and notoriable cards that we should talk about. So I think it's safely to assume that we have one more card fight update for the first set, and after that, we're probably going to start into set 2. But we also have Token Rumbu on the horizon. The collab set is also next month. So I'm very curious when those reveals are going to happen, because they also have a starter deck or trial deck. So there's a lot to go over. So with that said, let me know in the comments down below which cards of today's reveals are you most excited about? Which nation are you very happy with the support? Which cards can you not wait to try out? Let me know in the comments section down below. As always, this video has been brought to you by our lovely patrons over at patreon.com/VanguardInsider. You guys are amazing. If you do want to support the channel or everything that's happening on the channel, you can simply go to patreon.com/VanguardInsider and become a patron today. But with that said, I'm Mr. Timeleap. I see you guys in the next one.